My mother-in-law thought she was exposing my darkest secret when she slid a DNA test across the Sunday dinner table, but the results revealed a truth about her that shattered everyone's reality. My name is Danielle. I'm 32 years old. Last Sunday afternoon, my mother-in-law pushed a cream-colored envelope across the dining room table, fixed her gaze on my husband, and announced, "I believe you need to examine this." She had taken it upon herself to run a genetic test on our 3-year-old daughter without a word to either of us. She anticipated the findings would tear my marriage apart. What she never saw coming was that those same findings would tear her world wide open. But here's what none of them understood. Not my husband, not his sister, not even his father. I had discovered what she was planning 2 full weeks before that dinner, and what I accomplished during those 14 days altered absolutely everything. Before I rewind to the beginning of this story, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I genuinely love seeing those. Now, let me transport you back 7 years to my very first encounter with Patricia Atwood. I was 25. Mark and I had been together for roughly 4 months. He brought me to his parents' home on a crisp Saturday in autumn, and his mother answered the door like she was preparing to interrogate a suspect. She didn't offer a hug. She extended her hand for a shake. Firm grip, eyes already conducting an assessment. The first half hour was perfectly pleasant. Pot roast, polite conversation, Warren sharing a story about rewiring their basement. Nothing remarkable. But then Patricia redirected the conversation the way she redirected everything. Quietly, deliberately, with purpose. "So Danielle, where did you grow up?" I told her. "Bridgeport, modest apartment." "My mother worked as a pediatric nurse. And your father?" I set down my fork. "He left when I was 6 years old." Patricia gave a slow, measured nod. She reached up and touched her pearl earring, that small practice gesture I would observe countless times over the next 7 years. She twisted it once between thumb and forefinger, then offered a smile. That must have been quite difficult. She delivered it the way people say fascinating when they actually mean filed away for future reference. Later in the car, Mark said, "She really liked you." I asked, "Did she?" He laughed. I didn't. What I recognized that evening and what I mentally cataloged without fully grasping its significance was how intensely Patricia needed to know the origins of everything, not just me. Everything. She questioned Mark about the wine. Where was it bottled? Who recommended it? She examined the label before pouring. This was a woman who tracked provenance obsessively. I didn't understand then that this compulsion would eventually be weaponized against my daughter, but I remember thinking, she's someone who keeps a permanent ledger. Mark and I married the following June. Intimate ceremony, roughly 40 guests, outdoor venue near the Connecticut shoreline. My mother flew in from Arizona. Patricia wore cream, which my maid of honor described as a deliberate power play. I didn't care. I was marrying a genuinely good man. The first year was quiet in the way early marriages often are. We rented a house in Milford, 40 minutes from Patricia and Warren. Close enough for holidays, far enough for breathing room. Except Patricia didn't believe in breathing room. She appeared unannounced. Tuesdays mostly, sometimes Thursdays. She'd walk through the side door, we'd given her a key for emergencies and rearrange whatever was within reach. The spice rack, the coat closet. Once she reorganized my entire linen cabinet and left a note, towels by color. Easier to find. I thanked her. Mark said that was simply how she operated. Courtney, Mark's younger sister, visited on weekends. She was 24 then, still living with Patricia, still orbiting her mother like a satellite with no independent trajectory. Every visit followed the same pattern. Courtney would leave, and by that evening, Patricia would call Mark with commentary about our house, our meals, our plans. I didn't say anything. I was new to the family. I was still learning the unspoken rules. One Thanksgiving, Patricia raised her glass. To Mark, she declared. She surveyed the table. Warren, Courtney, Aunt Margot, Uncle Dennis. Then her eyes landed on me for exactly 1 second. Mark could have had anyone. Absolutely anyone. The table laughed. I smiled. Somewhere in my chest, a small, precise instrument made its first permanent measurement. Lily was born on a Wednesday in March, 2 years into our marriage. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She arrived screaming, which the nurse assured us was an excellent sign. Her hair was dark, almost black. Patricia held her in the hospital room and said, "She looks exactly like Mark did as a baby. There was genuine warmth in it. Real, authentic warmth." For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe maybe this is what finally brings us together. That moment lasted approximately 6 months. At 6 months, Lily's hair began to change. Not suddenly, strand by strand, like autumn arriving gradually. Dark brown lightened to auburn. Auburn brightened to copper. By her first birthday, my daughter had a full head of strawberry red curls that caught the light like tiny flames. I thought it was beautiful. My mother had the same hair, her grandmother before her. The genetics were never a mystery to me, but Patricia didn't see genetics. She saw a problem. Interesting, she said at Lily's first birthday party, holding a curl between her fingers the way someone handles evidence at a crime scene. Red hair. She looked at Mark, then at me, then back at Mark. "Where exactly does that come from?" I explained. "Recessive gene. My maternal line. It skips generations sometimes." Patricia offered the pearl earring smile. Interesting, because red hair doesn't run in the Atwood family." She said it lightly, the way you mention a crack in a foundation. Not alarming, just factual, just something that probably ought to be investigated. Nobody at the party responded, but I heard it, and I knew, with the certainty of someone trained to read body language, that she had been thinking about this for a considerable time. Over the next year, things shifted. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing Patricia did was ever dramatic initially. She was methodical. She planted seeds the way someone salts a road before a storm, thin, deliberate layers you don't feel until you lose your footing. The comments about Lily's hair became routine. Not every visit, but frequently enough. She's so uniquely featured. Nobody on our side has that coloring. Does your family have any Irish ancestry? Perhaps that explains it. I started keeping count. 14 comments in 6 months. I recorded the dates in a small notebook I kept in my bedside drawer. Professional habit. In my work as an occupational therapist, I documented everything. Behavioral patterns, motor milestones, sensory triggers. Documentation was how I made sense of the world. Courtney amplified the campaign from her own platform. She posted a photo of Lily on Instagram, red curls, green romper, standing in Patricia's garden with the caption, "She's so unique looking. Wonder where she gets it." Smiley face. 1,400 likes. I showed Mark. He shrugged. Courtney's just being Courtney. The extended family began to regard me differently. Warren's brother Dennis avoided eye contact at a barbecue. Cousin Ellie, who had always been warm, stopped texting. And Aunt Margot, Patricia's older sister, started watching me the way you watch someone you're waiting to catch in a lie. None of this was spoken aloud. That was the point. Patricia wasn't constructing a case with words, she was building one with silence. The kind of silence that fills a room with suspicion the way smoke fills a house before anyone sees the fire. I felt it. I just couldn't prove it yet. The sippy cup incident happened on a Tuesday in April. Mark had a site meeting 2 hours north. I had a late shift at the hospital. A 7-year-old with a spinal cord injury needed extra session time, and I couldn't say no. Patricia offered to watch Lily. I dropped Lily off at 10 in the morning, packed her bag, snacks, diapers, her favorite stuffed elephant, and the green sippy cup she'd been using since she was 18 months old. When I picked Lily up at 6, the cup was gone. "Oh, that old thing," Patricia said. I threw it out. It looked worn. It wasn't worn. I'd bought it 3 weeks earlier. I didn't push it. I thanked her, loaded Lily into the car seat, drove home. But something else caught my eye that afternoon. When I walked through Patricia's kitchen to grab Lily's jacket from the counter, I noticed a small Ziploc bag on the table, the kind you use for snack storage, or evidence. Patricia moved fast. She snatched it up and tucked it into a drawer before I could read the label. "Just organizing," she said. And on her desk in the hallway, partially visible behind a stack of mail, I saw a manila envelope. Thick, sealed return address I couldn't quite make out. I didn't connect any of it that night. The sippy cup, the Ziploc bag, the envelope, they were puzzle pieces without a picture. I went home, bathed Lily, read her a story, and fell asleep. But my brain, the part of me trained to notice patterns in children who couldn't tell me what was wrong, that part was already working. At work, I was someone else, not a different person, a fuller version of the same one. In Patricia's world, I was quiet, careful, always adjusting. At the hospital, I was calm because I chose to be. There's a difference. My patients that spring included a 4-year-old boy named Aiden, born with cerebral palsy. His left hand curled inward, his right hand overcompensated. Getting him to hold a crayon was a project measured in millimeters and months. I sat with him 3 times a week, guiding his fingers, adjusting his grip, waiting. Some sessions he cried. Some sessions he laughed. Most sessions he just stared at the crayon like it was a mountain he wasn't sure he could climb. One Thursday, he drew a circle. Lopsided, shaky, barely closed. But a circle. His mother cried in the hallway. I cried in the supply closet after my shift. My supervisor, Dr. Rivas, pulled me aside the following week. "Danielle, you're the calmest person in a crisis I've ever met." I made $72,000 a year. Not rich, not struggling. Enough to cover my student loans, contribute to Lily's education fund, and pay for the occasional dinner Mark and I still managed to have alone. I mention this because later, when Patricia tried to frame me as someone who married Mark for money or security, it mattered that I had built my own life before he was in it. I paid my way through grad school. I earned my license. I chose this work because holding a child's hand while they learn to do something they were told they couldn't do is the closest thing I know to prayer. Patricia never asked about my work. Not once in 7 years. Easter was the first time Patricia said it in front of everyone. We were at her house. Full table, Warren, Courtney, Margot, Dennis, Ellie. Lily had just run into the dining room in her yellow dress, red curls bouncing, and Ellie said, "Oh my God, she's adorable." Patricia set her wine glass down. She really doesn't look like any Atwood I've ever seen. She paused. Let the silence do its work. Not one. Courtney, right on cue, Mom's right. I looked at old family photos. No redheads. I felt the table turn. Not dramatically. Nobody gasped. But the air changed the way air changes before weather. Warren cleared his throat. Margot studied her asparagus. I looked at Mark. He was looking at his plate. He said nothing. The dinner continued. Lily ate her mashed potatoes. Patricia served dessert. Courtney complimented the pie. The wound was delivered and papered over in the same breath. In the car on the way home, I said, "If your mother says that one more time in front of your family, I will respond." Mark's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "She won't. I'll talk to her." "When?" "Soon. That's what you said after Thanksgiving." He didn't answer. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Lily slept in the back, her red curls pressed against the car seat fabric. He never talked to her. I knew he wouldn't. Mark avoided conflict the way some people avoid highways, not because they're afraid, but because they learned early that the fastest route was also the one with the most collisions. But I was done waiting for him to merge. 3 weeks after Easter, my phone rang at work. I was between patients, sitting in the therapy room, cleaning rubber grips from a hand exercise kit. The number was local. I almost let it go to voicemail. Mrs. Atwood, this is Kelly from Geneva Labs. I'm calling to confirm that we've received a sample for analysis under your daughter's name, Lily Atwood, age 3. I set the grip down. I didn't submit a sample. The submission was made under the name Patricia Atwood. She listed herself as the child's grandmother. However, our policy requires parental consent for testing on minors. I asked her to repeat that. She did. We've placed the test on hold pending your authorization. Would you like to proceed or cancel? Cancel. My hands were shaking when I hung up, but my voice hadn't cracked. It never does when it matters. Something I learned from my mother, who delivered bad news to parents about their children's health for 28 years and never once raised her voice. I sat in the therapy room for 4 minutes. I stared at the wall chart of hand muscles, flexor digitorum, abductor pollicis, opponens. I let the Latin ground me. Then I picked up my phone and called a family attorney. Let me pause here, because what I did in the 14 days between that phone call and that Sunday dinner is the reason I'm standing where I am today. If this story resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. I promise it's worth staying. I called a lawyer that same afternoon. Her name was Rachel, and she told me something that changed the way I understood everything. Rachel Nguyen practiced family law out of a small office in New Haven. She had 14 years of experience and a reputation for being direct. I told her everything, the comments, the sippy cup, the phone call from Geneva Labs. She listened without interrupting, which in my line of work is the hallmark of someone who's actually paying attention. When I finished, she leaned back. Under Connecticut law, a grandparent cannot authorize genetic testing on a minor child without the express consent of a parent or legal guardian. Full stop. So what she did is illegal. It's a violation of your daughter's privacy rights and potentially actionable in civil court. It may also violate the testing company's terms of service, which could expose them as well. She paused. Did she forge your consent on the submission form? I don't know. We'll find out. Rachel made a note. In the meantime, don't confront her. Don't tell your husband yet. I looked at her. Why not? Because if you tell Mark, he'll call his mother. She'll cry, apologize, and ask him to keep it in the family. The pattern will repeat. If you want this to stop, really stop, you need to let her play her hand. I paid the consultation fee, $350. It was the best money I've ever spent. Walking out of Rachel's office, I called Geneva Labs back. I asked them to confirm the sample had been canceled and to flag any future submissions involving Lily Atwood without my written authorization. Then I drove to pick up Lily from daycare. She ran to me at the door, arms up, red curls everywhere. I held her and thought, nobody is taking anything from us. That night after Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I searched DNA testing consent laws, Connecticut, minor child. The results confirmed what Rachel had told me. Parental consent was required. A grandparent had no legal standing to authorize genetic testing on a grandchild. I searched at home DNA test kits. No parental consent. This was where it got more complicated. Clinical labs like Geneva had strict consent protocols. That's why they called me. But consumer platforms, the ones that advertise ancestry and family connections, had consent checkboxes that were easier to click. I am the parent or legal guardian. Submit done. Patricia had used Geneva for what I assumed was a paternity-style test, but had she also used a consumer platform? I opened Patricia's Facebook page. She rarely posted, but Courtney tagged her in things. Family dinners. Lily's photos. I scrolled back. In February, Courtney had shared an article titled, What Your DNA Says About Your Family, The Surprising Connections at Home Tests Reveal. Patricia had commented, very interesting. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder on my desktop labeled Documentation. Professional habit. Then I opened my bedside notebook, the one where I'd been logging Patricia's comments about Lily's hair. 14 entries in 6 months. I added a 15th, April 14th. Geneva Labs confirmed sample submitted under Patricia Atwood's name without parental consent. I closed the notebook. I looked at the bedroom door. Mark was already asleep. I wanted to wake him. I wanted to show him everything. But Rachel's words kept circling, let her play her hand. So I turned off the lamp and I waited. The hardest part wasn't the waiting. It was carrying the knowledge alone. For the next 3 days, I moved through my life as if nothing had changed. I went to work. I treated patients. I came home and cooked dinner and gave Lily her bath and read her the same book about the caterpillar she'd requested every night for 2 months. Mark noticed nothing, and I don't blame him for that. He was managing 3 construction sites that month. He came home tired. He kissed Lily on the forehead. He kissed me on the mouth. He fell asleep by 9:30. One night, Lily crawled between us. She does that. 2 in the morning, bare feet padding down the hall, climbing in like a small negotiator at a summit. She curled into Mark's side, her red curls fanned across the pillow. I watched them in the nightlight. My husband and my daughter. His jaw, her curls, his steady breathing, her small fist gripping his shirt. I thought about my mother. She'd raised 3 children on a nurse's salary after my father walked out. No family money, no backup plan. She did it by documenting everything: insurance claims, school forms, budgets scratched on the backs of envelopes. She taught me that information isn't power. Knowing when to use it is. At work, I helped a 6-year-old girl practice gripping a spoon. She dropped it 11 times. On the 12th, she held it long enough to bring it to her mouth. She looked at me and smiled. "Good," I said. Again, some things can't be rushed. You prepare, you position, you wait for the moment when the grip holds. I wasn't ready yet, but I was getting close. On day 5, I got lucky. I drove to Patricia's house to pick up a pair of Lily's shoes she'd left there the previous weekend. Patricia was out. "Hair appointment," Courtney said when she opened the door. Courtney was in the living room, phone propped against a stack of books, FaceTiming someone. I walked past her toward the mudroom where Lily's shoes were. The house was quiet, except for Courtney's voice, which carried the way it always did, louder than necessary, as if the world needed to hear her participation in it. "Mom has the results. She's doing it at Sunday dinner in front of everyone." I stopped. My hand was on Lily's left shoe. She's been planning it for weeks. She says once Mark sees the proof, he won't be able to ignore it. The voice on the other end said something I couldn't hear. Courtney laughed. "I know, right? It's going to be insane." I picked up the shoes, walked back through the living room. Courtney saw me, killed the call fast. "Oh, hey, just chatting with a friend." I smiled. "No worries, just grabbing Lily's shoes." "Cool, tell Mark I said hi." "Will do." I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, set the shoes on the passenger seat, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and pressed until my knuckles turned white. Now I knew 3 things. When, Sunday, where, the dinner table. Who would be watching everyone? Patricia had built a stage. She'd cast the audience. She'd rehearsed the lines. And she believed, fully, absolutely believed, that the results would say what she wanted them to say. I started the car. I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let her light the match. The fire would find its own way back. On day 7, I found James. Not intentionally. Not at first. I was trying to understand how Patricia's Dana submission worked on the consumer platform, the one she'd used alongside the clinical lab. I created my own account on the same service, submitted my own sample, and spent an evening reading about how familial matching algorithms function. Here's what I learned. When you submit Dina to one of these platforms, the system doesn't just test paternity. It scans the entire database for genetic relatives, siblings, cousins, second cousins. Anyone who shares enough markers with your sample gets flagged as a potential relative. Patricia had submitted Lily's Dina. That meant Lily's profile was now cross-referenced with every other profile in the system. I logged into the account Patricia had created. She'd used an email I found through a password reset trick Courtney had once mentioned in passing. The password was Lily's birthday. Of course it was. And there, under potential relatives on Lily's profile, was a name I'd never seen. James M. age 36. Portland, Oregon, relationship estimate, half-uncle or equivalent. I stared at the screen. Half-uncle meant one thing. James shared a biological parent with either Mark or with me. Since I wasn't biologically connected to the platform's test, only Lily was, the match had to be on Mark's side, which meant either Warren had a secret son or Patricia did. I took a screenshot, saved it to the documentation folder, emailed it to Rachel. The next morning, Rachel called. If this match is accurate, it means someone in the Atwood bloodline has a biological connection to this man that they haven't disclosed. Or that Patricia has a biological connection, I said. She submitted the test. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then we need to find out who James M. is. James Michael Callahan, born June 1990. Portland, Oregon, adopted at birth through a private agency in Hartford, Connecticut. It took me 2 evenings to find this. The Dina platform had limited public information, but James had opted into the open to contact feature. His profile said, adopted, looking for biological family, open to conversation. I didn't contact him. That wasn't my right. But I did the math. Born 1990. Patricia was 25. She and Warren married in 1992 when she was 27. Mark was born in 1992 as well. Patricia had a child 2 years before she married Warren. She gave that child up for adoption. And she never told anyone, except possibly the one person who'd been sitting at every family dinner watching me with careful eyes. Aunt Margot. Because when I looked at James's DA match report more carefully, I noticed something. The platform listed shared matches, other profiles that both James and Lily connected to. One of them was tagged Margaret R. possible aunt or half-aunt. Margot's middle name was Ruth. Margaret Ruth. Margot knew. She'd known for 36 years. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about Patricia. Not with anger. Not yet. I thought about a 25-year-old woman, unmarried, probably terrified, making a decision that would follow her for the rest of her life. I understood that kind of fear. I'd grown up watching my mother make impossible choices. But understanding a choice and forgiving the lie that follows it aren't the same thing. Patricia hadn't just given up a child. She'd buried the truth so deep that she convinced herself the only threat to her family's bloodline was me. She was afraid of being found out, and she turned that fear into a weapon aimed at my daughter. Thursday, Patricia called. Big family dinner this Sunday. I want everyone there. I told Warren to invite Dennis. Her voice was bright. Too bright. The kind of brightness that comes from rehearsal. We'll be there, I said. Friday, I printed the screenshots. I organized my documentation folder, dates, events, evidence, lab confirmation, platform login records, the familial match report for James M. I backed everything up to my cloud drive and emailed copies to Rachel. Rachel, if she does it, if she presents the test publicly, that strengthens your position in any civil action. You have witnesses. I know. Are you sure you want to go through with this? You could confront her privately. End it before Sunday. I'm sure. Saturday night, I gave Lily her bath. She sat in the tub, splashing, her red curls slicked wet and dark against her neck. I shampooed her hair gently, working the lather through the tangles. Mommy, why does Grandma Pat always touch my hair? I paused. My 3-year-old already noticing. Because your hair is beautiful, baby. Is it magic hair? I smiled. The most magic. I dried her, dressed her in pajamas, read her the caterpillar book. She fell asleep holding my thumb. Mark came upstairs. Mom seems really excited about Sunday. Wonder what's up. I looked at him. My husband. Kind face. Tired eyes. A good man who'd spent his entire life believing his mother was who she said she was. I guess we'll find out, I said. I lay in bed that night and didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and ran through every scenario. In every version, the truth came out. The only variable was how much it would cost. Sunday morning, I dressed carefully. Ivory sweater, soft, not sharp. Dark jeans. The small gold necklace Mark gave me on our first anniversary. No war paint, no armor, just me. Lily wore a blue dress with white flowers. She spun twice in the hallway mirror before I caught her. Mark loaded the car. 40 minutes north. Classic rock on the radio. Lily fell asleep before we hit the highway. I watched Mark's hands on the steering wheel. Strong hands, capable hands. He built things for a living. Houses, structures, things designed to hold weight. And I thought, today those hands would either hold mine or let go. We pulled into Patricia's driveway at 4:15. 3 cars already there. Warren's truck, Courtney's sedan, a silver Buick I recognized as Margot's. Full house. Patricia met us at the door. She hugged Mark, long, firm, the kind of hug mothers give when they're about to do something they believe is righteous. She nodded at me. Brief, efficient. Put Lily down upstairs, she said. She can nap in the guest room. I carried Lily up, laid her on the bed, pulled a blanket over her legs. Her red curls fanned across the white pillow. Back downstairs, the family was assembled. Warren in his usual chair by the window. Dennis beside him. Courtney on the couch, phone in hand, leg bouncing. Ellie, Courtney's cousin, setting out napkins. Margot standing by the china cabinet, arms crossed, mouth tight. And on the hallway table, right where I'd seen it 2 weeks ago, the manila envelope. Thick, sealed, waiting. Patricia caught me looking at it. She smiled. The pearl earring smile. Dinner first, she said. The pot roast was good. I'll give Patricia that. She'd always been an excellent cook, one of the few things about her that wasn't a performance. Warren told a story about a fishing trip. Dennis laughed. Ellie complimented the gravy. Normal sounds, normal dinner. But I was watching the currents beneath the surface. Courtney checked her phone every 30 seconds. Not texting, just checking the time. She was on a clock. Margot held her fork the way some people hold the railing on a bridge. Tight grip, eyes straight ahead. She ate almost nothing. Patricia sat at the head of the table. She smiled at everyone. She asked about Dennis's new truck. She refilled Warren's water. She was performing calm the way an actress performs grief. Technically perfect. Emotionally hollow. 20 minutes in, the small talk had run its course. Warren was mid-sentence about a carburetor when Patricia stood up. She smoothed her blouse, tucked a strand of dyed brown hair behind her ear, cleared her throat. Before dessert, she said, "There's something I want to share with the family." The table went quiet. Warren stopped talking. Dennis set his fork down. Ellie looked at Courtney. Courtney looked at her plate. Margot closed her eyes just for a second, just long enough for me to notice. Patricia walked to the hallway, returned with the manila envelope. She held it the way a prosecutor holds an exhibit, at chest level, label facing out. What happened in the next 3 minutes changed everything. Not just for me, for every person at that table. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Stay with me. Patricia set the envelope on the table, slid it toward Mark. "Open it." Mark looked at the envelope, then at his mother. "What is this?" Patricia placed her hands flat on the table. She'd rehearsed this. I could tell because her breathing was measured, the same cadence she probably used when delivering disciplinary news at the elementary school where she'd spent 30 years as an administrator. "This is a DINA test," she said, "for Lily." The room contracted. I could feel it, the walls pulling inward, the air thinning. "Patricia, what the hell did you do?" Warren's voice. Patricia didn't look at him. She looked at me. "No offense, dear, but this family deserves the truth." "Mom," Mark's voice was low. "What truth?" "I had Lily tested privately because I love this family. Because that child," she pointed toward the ceiling, toward the room where our daughter slept, "doesn't look like an Atwood." Courtney leaned forward. Margot stared at her plate. Patricia's voice rose half a register. She was reaching the part she'd practiced most. "I've said it before. I'll say it again. Red hair doesn't run in the Atwood family. And I think Mark has a right to know whether that child is really his." The sentence landed on the table like a brick through glass. Dennis looked at his hands. Ellie's mouth opened, then closed. Warren gripped the armrest of his chair. Mark stared at the envelope. His hands were steady, but his jaw was working the way it does when he's deciding between silence and something irreversible. "Open it," Patricia said again. She was smiling. She believed, truly, deeply believed, that the contents of that envelope would prove her right. She was wrong. Mark picked up the envelope, broke the seal, pulled out a stack of pages. 5 or 6 sheets printed on lab letterhead. He read the first page in silence. 15 seconds passed, maybe 20, long enough for Patricia to shift her weight from one foot to the other, long enough for Courtney to stop breathing. Mark looked up. He looked at Patricia. "She's mine." Patricia blinked. "What?" "Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. He held up the page. "Lily is my daughter." The smile on Patricia's face didn't fall. It fractured like ice on a windshield. Still in place, but no longer holding. "That can't be right." "Let me see." She reached for the papers. Mark pulled them back. "No, you've done enough." "Courtney, maybe the lab made an error." Mark turned to her. "Shut up, Court." Courtney recoiled like she'd been slapped. In 34 years, Mark had never spoken to her like that. The room understood. Something had shifted in him. A door that had been propped open his entire life had just closed. Patricia's hand went to her pearl earring, twisting, the gesture I'd seen at our first dinner together, at Thanksgiving, at Easter, at every moment when Patricia's certainty met resistance, and she needed something to hold on to. "There must be a mistake," she said. Her voice was smaller now. "The hair, the coloring, it doesn't make sense." Mark set the papers down. He looked at me for the first time since Patricia had stood up. I'd been sitting at the far end of the table, still quiet, hands folded in my lap, watching, and now it was my turn to speak. "The results are correct. Patricia," my voice was level. The same voice I use when a parent asks me if their child will ever walk normally. Calm, clear, carrying more weight than volume. I know because I called the lab 2 weeks ago when they contacted me to verify parental consent. Consent that you never obtained. The room shifted. Not a sound. A vibration. The kind you feel in the floor before a train arrives. Warren leaned forward. "You tested our granddaughter without their permission?" Patricia's chin lifted. "I was protecting this family. Under Connecticut state law," I said, "a grandparent cannot authorize genetic testing of a minor without written parental consent. Your attorney can explain the specifics if you'd like. Mine already has." I said this the way I document a patient's progress notes. Factual, chronological, without adjectives. Patricia's face cycled through 3 colors in as many seconds, pink to red to white. Her hand dropped from her earring. "But the lab should have, the lab followed protocol. You didn't." Silence. Courtney pressed her lips together. Dennis looked at Warren. Warren looked at Patricia with an expression I'd never seen him wear. Not anger, not disappointment. Something worse, the look of someone realizing they don't know the person sitting across from them. I let the silence hold. 1 second, 2, 3, then I said, but that's not the most interesting thing in those results. Every head turned. Mark looked at me. What do you mean? Keep reading, I said. Page 4. He flipped past the paternity confirmation, past the methodology page, past the consent disclosure. He reached the familial match report. Mark read aloud slowly, the way you read something you don't yet understand. Potential familial match. James M. age 36, Portland, Oregon, relationship estimate, half-uncle to Lily Atwood. He stopped, looked at the page again, looked at me, looked at Patricia. Half-uncle. He said it like he was translating from another language. That would mean he's either my half-brother or Danielle's half-brother. He's not mine, I said. Mark turned to Patricia. Mom, who is James? Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Her pearl earring, the one she'd been touching all night, hung motionless. Even the nervous gesture had abandoned her. I don't know what that. Aunt Margot's fork hit the plate. She stood up. Trish, don't. 2 words, and the room understood everything. Dennis, Margot, sit down. Warren stood slowly. His chair scraped across the hardwood, a sound that cut through the silence like a blade dragged across stone. Trish, answer the question. Patricia's eyes filled. She looked at Margot. Margot shook her head, a small, desperate no. It was before you, Patricia said. Her voice cracked, not the practiced crack of a woman performing vulnerability. A real crack, the kind that comes from a wall bearing weight for 36 years finally giving way. Before your father. I was 25. I wasn't ready. You had a child. Mark's voice was flat. I was young. I was so scared. You had a child, and you never told me. He stood now, too. You never told Dad. Warren's hand found the back of his chair. He held it the way you hold something when the ground is no longer steady. 36 years. His voice was quiet. Electrician's hands flat on the table. We've been married 34. Patricia, Warren, please, it was before us. I was so ashamed. You told Margot. He looked at Margot, who was still standing, one hand on the china cabinet. But not me. Margot Warren, she was scared. Were you scared for 36 years, Trish? The question landed and stayed. Nobody moved. Patricia cried. Real tears this time. Not the performative kind she deployed when Mark forgot to call on Sundays or when Courtney canceled plans. These were the tears of a woman watching a foundation she'd built with silence crumble under the weight of her own scheme. For one moment, one small, strange moment, I saw her. Not the Patricia who'd spent 7 years questioning my daughter's Dina, but the 25-year-old girl who sat in a hospital in Hartford and signed papers and walked away from a baby she wasn't allowed to keep. I understood that girl. My heart ached for her. Then Patricia wiped her eyes, straightened her back, and said, "This is Danielle's fault. She brought this up to humiliate me." The moment of sympathy evaporated like steam off a window. Gone, Mark stepped forward. Mom, Danielle didn't bring up anything. You ordered the Dina test. You planned this dinner. You slid that envelope across the table. He picked up the pages, held them toward her. I think you need to see this. He said it slowly, the same words she'd used 20 minutes earlier. Isn't that what you said? Well, we saw it. Patricia sat down, not in her chair. She missed it slightly and caught the edge. Margot reached for her. Patricia pushed her hand away. Courtney was crying. Mascara tracked down both cheeks. She looked less like a 29-year-old influencer and more like a child who just discovered the rules of her world weren't what she thought. I didn't know about James, she said. Mom, you told me Lily wasn't Mark's. You said you had proof. Patricia, she's not, the red hair Mark cut in. Mom, I'm the one with the recessive gene. He pulled out his phone, swiped through his photos, found what he was looking for, and held it up for the table to see. A photograph. Old, taken in the early 1980s, judging by the clothes. A young woman standing in a garden, squinting into the sun. She had red hair. I found this in the attic last year, Mark said. In a box of old photos you told me were Aunt Margot's. It's you, Mom, age 19 or 20. Dennis leaned in. Patricia, is that you? Your hair was red. Patricia's hand, the one that always found her pearl earring, hung at her side. She reached up slowly, unclipped the earring, set it on the table. The small gold post clicked against the wood. I started dyeing it at 19, she said. I always hated it. The red hair that didn't run in the Atwood family had run through Patricia's veins since birth. She'd buried it under 40 years of salon appointments and careful maintenance. And then, when her granddaughter was born with the same trait, she didn't see inheritance. She saw exposure. Courtney looked at me. I'm so sorry, Danielle. I know you didn't, Courtney. There was nothing else to say at that table. Warren picked up his jacket from the back of his chair. He put it on slowly, the way he did everything. Deliberate, measured. I'm going for a drive, he said. He didn't look at Patricia. Mark, we're leaving too. He turned to me. Get Lily. I went upstairs. Lily was still sleeping. Red curls spread across the white pillow like small copper rivers. I lifted her gently. She stirred, pressed her face into my neck, and settled. I carried her downstairs. The dining room was emptying. Dennis had his coat. Ellie was at the front door, keys in hand. Margot stood by the china cabinet, frozen, arms wrapped around herself. At the front door, Patricia stepped in front of Mark. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair, that carefully dyed brown, looked suddenly wrong, like a costume. Mark, please don't leave like this. We can talk. Mark stopped, looked at her. You didn't want to talk, Mom. You wanted to perform. Margot tried. Everyone just needs to calm down. Warren, already at his truck, called back without turning. Margot, if you say one more word, I'm calling my lawyer in the morning. The sentence landed on the porch like a gavel. Margot went silent. Dennis passed her without a word. Ellie followed, eyes on the ground. I carried Lily to the car. Mark opened the door. I buckled her into the car seat. She murmured something about her stuffed elephant. I handed it to her. She grabbed it with both hands and went back to sleep. The house behind us, Patricia's house, the house she'd ruled for 30 years, emptied one person at a time. The dinner she'd planned to expose me had emptied her own home. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Lily slept in the back. The highway was empty. Sunday evening. Most people were already home. Streetlights passed overhead in slow rhythm, casting amber bands across the dashboard. Mark spoke first. How long did you know about the test? 2 weeks. About James? 8 days. Why didn't you tell me? I'd practiced this answer, not in words, but in logic. I knew the shape of it before I knew the sentences. Because I needed you to see it for yourself. If I'd told you privately, you would have called her. She would have cried and apologized and asked you to keep it in the family. And nothing would have changed. He gripped the steering wheel. Released. Gripped again. You're saying I would have let her off the hook. I'm saying the pattern was 34 years old. I couldn't break it with a conversation. You needed to see her perform. He was quiet for a mile. Then, she dyed her hair for 40 years. Red hair was hers all along. I know. Another mile. I have a brother. Half-brother in Portland. James, he said the name like he was tasting it, testing its weight. I watched him, his profile against the passing lights, the jaw that Lily had inherited, the shoulders that carried more than construction materials. He was processing, not shutting down, not deflecting. Processing, he reached across the center console, found my hand, held it. He didn't let go until we pulled into our driveway. He turned off the engine, sat for a moment, looked at me. "Thank you," he said, "for not protecting me from this." I squeezed his hand. "That's not what partners do." Monday. Mark called Patricia. "I need time. Don't contact Danielle or Lily." Patricia, "For how long?" Mark, "Until I'm ready." He hung up, poured coffee, went to work. That was Mark. Process by doing. Tuesday, Warren called. He was staying at Dennis's house. "Told your mother. I need space to think," he said. His voice was even. No tremor, no crack. Electrician's steadiness. 34 years of marriage. That's a lot of wire to trace back. Wednesday, Courtney texted me 3 words. "I am sorry." Then a longer message. "I should have questioned Mom instead of believing her. I was wrong, and I know an apology doesn't fix it, but I needed to say it." I replied, "Thank you for saying that." Thursday, Rachel sent Patricia a formal letter. Cease and desist regarding any unauthorized genetic testing of Lily Atwood. Notice of potential civil action under Connecticut privacy statutes. Patricia called Mark. Panicked, Mark told her to read the letter carefully and call a lawyer. Friday evening. Mark sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He'd been quiet all week, not withdrawn, just focused, like he was building something in his head. "I found him," he said. "James, he's a high school history teacher. He coaches JV basketball. He has a daughter, 4 years old." He turned the screen toward me. A photo on a school website. James Callahan. Dark hair. Same jaw as Mark. Same slight crook in the nose. He'd posted on the Dina platform 3 years ago, looking for his birth mother. On the desk behind us, the manila envelope sat where I'd placed it when we got home Sunday night, unsealed. The document that was meant to destroy us had become the document that rebuilt the truth. Mark emailed James on Saturday morning. He wrote and deleted it 4 times. I watched from the kitchen doorway with my coffee, saying nothing. He needed to find the words himself. The final version was short. "My name is Mark Atwood. I believe I am your half-brother. My mother was born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1965. If you're open to talking, I would like that." James responded in 2 hours. "I've been looking for her for 7 years. I never expected to hear from a brother." They scheduled a video call for that evening. Mark set up his laptop at the kitchen table. I took Lily to the living room to watch her caterpillar show. At 7:15, I heard Mark say, "Hi, I'm Mark." And then a voice I didn't recognize, deeper than Mark's, steadier. "Hi, Mark, I'm James." I stayed in the living room, but I could hear them, and after 20 minutes, I heard Mark cry. Not the quiet kind, the kind that comes from deep in the chest, from a place most men spend their lives pretending doesn't exist. I stood in the kitchen doorway. On the screen, James was crying too. Same jaw, same eyes, 36 years apart, and they look like 2 versions of the same blueprint. "James, does she know?" "My birth mother." Mark wiped his face. "She knows. It didn't go well. I don't want to cause problems. I just wanted to know where I came from." "James, you're not causing problems. You're not the one who lied." Lily tugged my hand. "Mommy, why is Daddy sad?" I picked her up. "He's not sad, baby. He's meeting someone new." 2 weeks later, Patricia came to our door unannounced. The old pattern, same side entrance, same assumption that her presence was always welcome. Except now the side door was locked. I'd changed the code. She knocked. I opened the front door. She stood on the step in a gray cardigan, eyes rimmed red, looking 10 years older than the woman who'd slid an envelope across a table, with the confidence of someone who believed she was saving her family. "I need to explain," she said. "I was young. My parents made me give him up. I carried this guilt for decades. Mark appeared behind me. Then you should have dealt with it honestly. Instead, you projected it onto my wife and my daughter. I was trying to protect. You weren't protecting anyone, Mom. You were protecting your secret." Patricia looked at me. "Danielle, please, I'm asking for a chance." I considered her for a long moment. This woman who'd spent 7 years measuring me, cataloging my flaws, salting the ground between me and her family. This woman who'd stolen my daughter's Dina. This woman who'd planned a public execution at her own dinner table and called it love. "Patricia, you're welcome to have a relationship with Lily. She loves you." We wouldn't take that from her. Hope flickered in her eyes. "But it will be on our terms, on our schedule, and you will never be alone with her again." The hope dimmed, but it didn't die. She nodded. "Those are the terms," I said. She didn't argue. For the first time in 7 years, maybe for the first time in her life, Patricia Atwood didn't argue. She stepped off the porch, walked to her car, and drove away. Warren called Mark on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the dinner. "Been at Dennis's since that night," he said. "First time in my life I've slept under another man's roof." "You okay, Dad?" "I've been seeing a counselor." "Don't laugh. I'm not laughing." "My guy, Dr. Pham, says I need to figure out what I can live with and what I can't." Warren paused. The line was quiet except for the sound of wind. He was probably outside, standing in Dennis's yard. "I can live with a mistake she made at 25. People make mistakes. Lord knows I have. But I can't live with 36 years of silence. That's not a mistake. That's a decision made every single day." Mark didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the kindest thing a son can offer. The following Saturday, Warren drove to our house. He brought a toy truck he'd made in Dennis's garage, hand-sanded, painted red, with wooden wheels that actually turned. "For my granddaughter," he said at the door. Lily saw him from the hallway. She ran. "Papa Warren." He scooped her up, and she pressed her face into his flannel collar, her red curls against his plaid shirt. He held her for a long time. Then he looked at Mark. "She looks like your mother did at this age, you know, before your mother started dyeing it." Mark nodded. "I know." Warren set Lily down. She rolled the truck across the porch, making engine sounds. He watched her with the expression of a man who just rewired his entire understanding of the past, tracing every connection back to its source, finding shorts and dead ends, and deciding which circuits were still worth keeping. 6 months later, Mark flew to Portland and met James in person. They sat in a diner for 4 hours. 2 men with the same jaw, the same slightly crooked nose, 36 years of distance between them. James brought his wife Amy and their daughter Sophie. Mark brought photos of Lily. In August, James and his family visited Connecticut. Sophie and Lily played in our backyard while Mark and James sat on the porch, drinking iced tea and watching their daughters chase each other through the sprinkler. I stood in the kitchen window and watched them, 2 brothers finding each other in the middle of their lives. Patricia and Warren went to couples therapy. Warren moved back home after 2 months, but he set conditions: honesty, full disclosure, no more locked drawers, no more buried histories. Patricia agreed. She stopped dyeing her hair. It came in silver gray now, with traces of red at the temples, the ghost of the girl she'd tried to erase. Courtney apologized formally. In writing. She mailed a letter, handwritten, 3 pages, to both me and Mark. It was the most honest thing she'd ever produced. The relationship was rebuilding slowly, the way you rebuild anything worth keeping, one honest conversation at a time. Aunt Margot wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. Nobody discussed it. The absence spoke clearly enough. At work, I helped a 5-year-old girl take her first steps in new leg braces. She grabbed my hands, pushed off, and stood for 3 seconds before sitting back down. Her mother sobbed. I wrote in my notes, patient stood unsupported for 3 seconds. Progress within expected range. Some things take time, but they come. The manila envelope sits in a drawer in my desk. I never threw it away. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me that sometimes the weapon someone builds to destroy you is the same weapon that sets you free. Here's what I know now. The people who try hardest to expose your secrets are usually the ones with the biggest secrets of their own. And the truth, the real truth, doesn't need a stage or an audience or a manila envelope slid across a dinner table. It just needs time. That's my story. A DNA test. A dinner table. A secret that was 36 years old. If this reminded you to trust yourself when everyone else doubts you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.